So I came across a quote not too long ago that I actually want to share with you guys as well, which may be helpful. But really, the objective today is to prepare you as best as possible for what's ahead. We appreciate everything everyone does for the club. We are, we're a big organization. We rely on many good qualified professional coaches, but also driven, energetic, and excited volunteers as well that help us. And we want to make sure that you're well prepared because, as I said, the quote I came across is like good people with good intentions can still give bad advice if they don't know enough about their craft. So the objective for the next, well, let's say 45 minutes to an hour at best, are to make sure you have all the information you need at any point. And Eric actually alluded to that. If you have any questions, just send them into the chat. Eric will monitor the chat. Well, I'll present based on a slide presentation. I'll share with you guys as well. I'll try to make it as interactive as possible. And again, I'm mindful of the time. I'm mindful of the fact that you guys are spending your evening with us tonight as well. So we'll get through things or the most important things as quickly as we can without obviously missing without I'm lost for words here. That doesn't happen often. But, obviously you want to make sure you're best prepared still. So we're not going to skip anything that's important. All right. So again, this is the meeting for tonight. All right. So quickly want to highlight a couple of things to make sure you guys are on the loop on really what we strive to do as a club. It's helpful to know the bigger picture, the why behind all that we do. I'll keep coming back to that on a couple occasions tonight. So our vision and mission, all right, something that we redid a couple of years ago, and it's important to share at the start of the each and every meeting. I'll give you 30 seconds to read through our mission statement. All right, a couple of words always stand out there. We do our best, and with your help, we want to make sure we provide high quality soccer experiences. We're we're a big organization that can provide soccer opportunities for children of all abilities. We're part of the community. That's one of our strengths as well. And, as the last bit says, we really want to use the game of soccer, for personal growth. And that would be both on and off the field. So that's a mission statement. I'll give you a little bit of time to go through our vision as well. And this is why we have such meetings, to prepare as best as possible, because if our aim is to be the best community enriching youth sports club, and we need your help. Without you, we can't do this. So again, we want to make sure you're as best prepared as possible. So our vision, our mission, right? I'll quickly go through our values. All this is on our website as well. Our core values. So respect, quality, and we definitely strive for excellence in everything we do. I'll touch on it in a little bit again. Inclusion, all right. So whole play development. All right, I'll talk about a child-centered environment shortly as well, because again, we're working with children, not just athletes or players. Commitment, you guys are all committed, hence you being out here tonight. I want to make sure that our players honor their commitments as well. Sportsmanship, big part of the game. And teamwork. That's, soccer in itself is a challenging game, and because it's played in a team, it can become even more challenging. But again, if you manage to get a team to work together, and we as a club work together, we can succeed. Our 7 core values, and again, this can be found on the website as well, but wanted to make sure this was shared with everyone as well. So one thing that I've shared with the professional coaches consistently last about a year and a half to 2 years that I also want to share with everyone else that's part of our organization that helps us further our mission and vision. All right. We want to make sure that that what we do is done with the right intentions in mind and that we plan for success. and what success looks like we'll define as we move through the presentation tonight as well. All right, so I'm going to highlight 3 core tenets of the WDC development philosophy. Again, not just giving you what we do or how we do it, but also the why behind it. We feel, and I feel, obviously, that it's really important to make sure that you guys know why we do what we do, because everything that we do is done with a thought behind it. And we continue to evolve. We continue to look for ways to get better. I mean, I'm proud to say that I've been with this organization for 8 years as a DOC, and from where we started to where we are now, and what we still do to get better, to serve the needs of the individuals part of our organization, our membership. You know, we want to make sure that we really do the best we possibly can. The first one, it's key to us, for children to love, for children to learn, for children to grow, they've got to love what they're doing. And whether they continue to play, you know, in travel, they move on into the county, they play USFC, we don't care. But we want to make sure they're provided with a sport for life, right? If you fall in love with the sport, you're going to stick with it. Very simple, all right? For learning, as I said, to take place, you got to love what you're doing. And most important of all, kids should be out in the field because they want to, not because they have to, right? And if we do that well, then we know we're on the right track. I mean, I'm still involved with the sport because I love it. There's professional coaches on this call that are involved coaching, whether full-time or part-time, who do it because they love it. And I know from speaking to many of the volunteers that are part of our call tonight as well, they do it because they love the sport and they want to give back to it. And that's exactly what we want. Wherever these children land in the future, we want to give them something that they can look back at fondly as they grow and develop. A child-centered environment, a safe environment, an environment in which, right, we're allowed to push the children, we're allowed to demand things of the children, but we also need them to know that we have their backs, right? It's not just all stick, but there's also a carrot, so to speak. I would highly encourage you to Google the warm demander. And then there's an article on that written by Doug Lamoff. He'll describe it very well. The best teachers, the best coaches are able to build relationships with their children in which that are built on trust, and therefore they can take these children where they otherwise wouldn't get. The children know that they're supported through and through. All right, understanding that when it comes to child development, failure doesn't exist. Okay. Anyone that expects, we're talking about 8, 9-year-olds at this point, 8, 9-year-olds not to make any mistakes, doesn't have a good understanding of child development. Children are going to make mistakes along the way. I mean, that's how they start. They go from crawling to wobbling to walking to running, but there's a lot of falling down and getting back up again along the way. Right? They wouldn't learn it without making those mistakes. And that applies to everything they do in their life. And therefore, we got to find a way to normalize mistakes. So kids or the children that we deal with are comfortable making mistakes in an environment that we create, as in a safe environment. And last but not least, right, focused on the game of soccer, what it's like. We want to develop capable and confident and independent decision makers. It is a player's game after all. That's why we train as often as we possibly can in a game-like environment, highlighting here that we do not, all right, and people don't always understand that. There's a misconception there, but we do not neglect the technical development of the players, the children. I'll highlight it later on as well, but we train in a game-like environment because it's a combination of decisions as well as the execution of set decisions. We also want to make sure, and again, this all comes back, that they're allowed to make their own decisions along the way. And we want children to take charge of their own development. All right. For the development of a player to really be successful, for them to become better at what they do, they need to drive the experience. The coach is there to help, the parents can support, but we can't do it for them. All right. So these are the 3: provide the players with a sport for life, create a safe environment, a child-centered environment, and develop capable and confident and independent decision makers. So I talked about child-centered environment. So I want to try something new. I'm just going to share something with you really quick. Bear with me. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put something in the chat right now, trying to make it as there we go, interactive as I possibly can. All right, and what I want you to do, think about, you first of all, click on the link that I shared with you. You'll see two boxes. One is highlighted child-centered, the other one is coach-centered. So click on it and provide your input. What do you better think of when you think of a child-centered environment, and what do you think of as being a coach-centered environment? All right, so if you can, just click on the link. I'm going to now share that screen with all you guys as well. There we go. There we go. There's a couple of you guys that have already started. So I'll share the link so we can look at it live or as you're filling it out as well. What do you think of when it comes to a child-centered environment versus a coach-centered environment? I'll give you, well, let's say, a minute from now. And I appreciate the energy as we look at this. All right, and again, lots of good notes made already as I'm looking at this. All right, so I'm sharing the screen. Some of you are still providing input here, but I love the enthusiasm, the energy here. Thank you for helping us get going through this activity as well. So it's really important that one understands the difference between child-centered and coach-centered environments. And when I say, or when we say, we want to work or develop a child-centered environment, it's important to know what a child-centered environment looks like, and also what a coach-centered environment looks like, or an adult-driven environment looks like. The biggest thing that you need to look at, and I think, for example, it's highlighted over here on the coach-centered, doesn't it consider the needs of the players, the team? When the adults or the adults put their or his or her needs ahead of that of the team and the children, then we're talking about a coach-centered environment. And what would that look like potentially? Now, at a young age, that means, for example, winning at all costs. And it's really important that you think about that, because a lot of parents still equals the success and development with winning. But you could be winning every game in the season, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the players are developing. It could also just be because you're in the wrong flight. Or you could lose all your games, but does that mean the players aren't developing, right? But if you sacrifice the needs of the players to win at all costs, for example, by at a young age putting kids in set positions, maybe playing certain players the whole game and other kids spending more time on the sideline next to the coach rather than being on the field, it is an adult-centered environment. And honestly, no one cares in the long run what happens in your soccer career when you're 8, 9 years old. Right? Our job is to create an environment in which children are given a chance to learn and develop. Right? And yes, we want to win, but winning is not at the heart of all that we do. We want to teach the players to compete, but it's not win at all costs. Right? And as it says here, focus more on short term. That's exactly coach-centered. What else do I see here? Shouting directions while the player's on the ball. We want to develop decision makers. Doesn't help if we shout directions when they have the ball. So there's quite a few very good points being made. And then when you look at child-centered, right, understanding and patient, very good. Autonomous, kids having fun, emotional support. I would say we call it empathy, right? Make sure that you know who you're dealing with and how to get the best out of each and every individual. So build confidence, all right? Let the kids realize the potential. All very good answers. I mean, to me, a good coach is able to take someone places where he or she otherwise wouldn't get without the support of the coach. A good coach does that. This was excellent, but as I said, for the sake of time, I do want to move on. So going back to the slide presentation, and bear with me here, I am technically challenged at times. So a couple of things I want to highlight. I'll touch on it briefly with the notion that I would love you to do a little bit of research on your own. So I know there's a few people here that have recently taken a state coaching certificate course, the one that you need to coach in youth soccer, coach youth soccer in New Jersey. And during that course, we also highlight Amanda Vishak and the fun maps. And what it exactly is research done to determine why children play sports, not just youth soccer, but why do they play sports? And the exciting part of this research is that it's largely completed by children and not by adults. So it's not adults telling other adults why children play sports, and it's actual children, which makes it very helpful. And they came to 11 fun determinants, all right, categorizing the different things that drive the experience. What makes it fun? Because we all say kids want to have fun, but what does it mean to the children? All right, versus what does it mean to us? Right, because a clown at a child's birthday party is fun, but that doesn't mean that it's having a clown on the sideline makes it fun. No, there's a lot of different things, from being with your friends, to forming relationships with potential new friends, to training hard, to competing, to being coached by a supportive coach. The gear, there's a lot of things that make it fun for them, and they broke it down in different categories. So overall, they came to a list, so I'm going really fast here. So you have a whole list of about 85 plus different fun factors. And winning was mentioned, but winning only came in like towards the end of the list. So kids do care about winning, but it's not what drives them. And it's important to note that, because the adults, as we said before, often confuse winning with development, or a lack of winning with a lack of development. All right. And I'll tell you this right now, I've never gotten rid of a coach, whether it was a professional or volunteer coach, because they didn't win enough. However, if someone is to treat a child or children the wrong way, doesn't help them, doesn't put their needs ahead of his or her needs, that is a reason to potentially get rid of someone. So I can talk about Amanda Vishak and the fun maps, but Google it. It will pop up. You'll find some very interesting things, including some YouTube videos in which she actually explains the research much better than I do. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight, and you may have heard this before, but it's the self-determination theory, which highlights really the basic psychological needs that we all need to have fulfilled. It explains our motivation. Sometimes we have conversations with individuals, with parents about the children, why their children lack motivation. They're not intrinsically motivated, which is really important to succeed. And it's not just in soccer, but in anything you do. What needs need to be fulfilled for someone to be intrinsically motivated to do well? So there's a couple of things that are key to this. So the first, so that went fast. Did I go too fast? Yes, I did. So I guess I didn't do this very well, but the three things here are belonging, knowing that you feel part of a group. That cannot be underestimated, by the way. That's why it's so important that you find a way to get through to each and every individual, include everyone. All right. Competence is another key factor. Right. Knowing that you're capable of something, knowing that you're getting better as well. And with that, autonomy, as in feeling that you are driving the experience. And there's a lot of research on this. The main reason that children walk away from activities, extracurricular activities, sports, not just soccer, but youth sports in general, is that last bit. Adults take that sense of autonomy away, right? Unfortunately, that happens more than we like. So it's really important to understand that as well. All right, so you can Google all this for even better explanations, but I did want to share this with all you guys. Now, we talked about child-centered environment. Highlight this one more time, just read through it. I'll give you 30 seconds for that. All right. So again, just describing a child-centered environment, which is often discussing education as well. All right. So before I touch on the impact of our development philosophy on our training methods, what I would love you to do is just use the chat for this one, but think through this. What characteristics come to mind when you think of the game of soccer? How would you describe the game of soccer? And more importantly, maybe what makes soccer different than other sports someone could potentially be participating in? So again, I'll monitor the chat right now. How would you describe the game of soccer? The characteristics of the game. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do 1 minute again. How would you describe the game of soccer? All right, I'm ready. Let's go. All right, so just use the chat for this one. All right, so I'm coming across some very nice and good answers as well. So a couple nice ones. Obviously, I see something about team sport, that it's fluid. So obviously that makes sense. Because of that, somebody highlighted quick thinking. The next answer is on continuous decision making. So there's a lot of different things that highlight what the game of soccer is about. Well, adding to that also that it's a little more complicated because of the fact that you're using your feet and not your hands, which is different from most sports. All right, so I'm going to go back because I realized that I, for whatever reason, wasn't sharing my screen anymore. So I told you I'm technically challenged. So now highlighting, give me a second. There we go. So the impact of our development philosophy on our training methods. The reason why I asked you to think through the characteristics of the game is if you really think through it and understand what the game of soccer is about and like, you'll get a better understanding of training methods being used, the way training methods have evolved also maybe from when you were playing. And a good example to give is that in any field, right, research impacts the methods and habits of professionals. So for example, if you are, and by no means am I comparing youth soccer or coaching youth soccer, training youth soccer to say heart surgery, but the manner in which heart surgeons now perform operations is different from what was done 10 years ago and probably even 5 years ago. They have moved forward, and you probably won't be able to get away with what was normal 10 years ago. The same applies to the coaching methods and habits, set forth now and mostly spoken about in this day and age. Coaching evolves, training evolves. So a couple of things that I want to highlight. All right. So if you had asked me this, and some of you may have heard this before, but if you asked me this, say 10 years ago, I would have told you every training sessions, the kids need as many touches on the ball. And that's why I use the number 1,000 touches. Can we make sure they have as many touches on the ball as possible? I still believe that, but a lot of touches without meaningful decisions will not accelerate the growth of said individual or the individuals involved. We want both. We want as many decisions to be made and then the execution of said decisions, aka the touches. So they now go hand in hand. It's not just very structured, unopposed, out of context training. Now we need decisions because that's the game of soccer. It's fluid, fast paced. You got to make decisions and you got to be able to execute those decisions. All right. In my email, was it last week? I highlighted a video, which I hope you watched. If you didn't, it really explains the difference between block practice and random training, where block practice is what I described before, very structured, out of context, versus a random training environment based on decisions, all right? And what the research says about, the overall transfer of knowledge from one and the other to the game. One is out of context, the other is more aligned to the game, and therefore an optimal transfer is when you train as much as possible in a game-like environment. And it could be as simple as a 1v1 already, because there's decisions to be made, but the decisions are based on the defender that is defending you, right? But there's a greater transfer of knowledge in the long run, right? What I also want to highlight, this is important to note, I speak to a lot of coaches, both professional and volunteer, especially, leading up to the start of the season. And every so often when I have conversations, people are highlighting all the different things they see go wrong. Just take a step back and recognize and remember that we're talking about, again, 8, 9-year-olds. Somebody's playing under 10 soccer starting this September, if you will, can be 8 years of age. The way you and I see the game, as in the adult version of the game, 11 aside, right, is not the way they see it, right? They're physically, mentally not as far in the development as you and I are, right? So don't assume that they see what you see. Don't assume that they understand what you understand, right? And most importantly of all, don't think there's a quick fix for everything. If you think in terms of quick fixes across the board, go back to the peddler that I shared with you guys earlier, where we talk about coach-centered versus child-centered. If you're looking short-term all the time to fix everything going wrong, then you may be more leaning towards being a coach in a coach-centered environment than it being about the children. All right. We talk about decision-making and execution. They go hand in hand. All right. Now, a quick example, very basic. So on the left side is an activity in a diamond, right? The yellow dotted arrow, place the ball to the right. We're going to go counterclockwise. I've done it a million times. But in this scenario on the left, all right, players are passing the ball counterclockwise, following the pass. There's a lot of variety that you can add to that as well. But what is missing there is that the players are not asked to make any decisions. Now, over time, in such drill, I should call it a drill versus an activity, in such drill, all right, you may see improvement, all right? But that's because there's not a lot of thinking involved anymore. They go through the motions. Your brain actually get lazy in set exercises as well. But you see, you think there's increased performance, but that's performance in an environment in which there's no challenges and there's no decisions to be made. And in the long run, there is very little transfer of that to the game. Now, on the right of that same picture, I have the same 4 players in a diamond. This is what they call a rondo, which is very popular nowadays, especially because of Barcelona and Pep Guardiola. But it's a simple, keep away activity, if you will. And in this scenario, there's 2 defenders in the middle. These 4 players are still, trying to move the ball around, but not in a set direction. And what they do is based on the pressure applied by the defenders, aka there's decisions involved. It could be more game-like because there's not really any set direction. There's no goals involved, but there's already decisions to be made. So in that sense, it's more game-like. And if I'm the person on the left, using my cursor here, hopefully you can see it, on the left of this little diamond, and I'm about to receive the ball, there it goes again. My decision and my first touch, for example, is based on what the defenders do. All right, instead of the picture on the left, the decision here is already made for me. I've been told by the coach what to do. Now, is there no place for this whatsoever? I'm not saying there is no that there is no place for what we call a block practice or set drill altogether, but this may be, especially in older age, something you use to fine-tune the ability of players, maybe as an activation activity, part of the warm-up before you really go into a training activity, for example. All right, but that's really the difference between block practice and random training. On the right, there's decisions involved, and the decisions dictate what we do. But they will also touch the ball plenty of times, and it's a combination of decision-making and execution. Ooh, I hope that's all clear, by the way. Now, I'm also quickly touching on the impact of our coaching, of our development philosophy on our coaching habits and methods. And we're making good time here, by the way, people. So early on, we talked about coaching versus controlling. Somebody highlighted this also as like a controlling coach, one that tries to impact the decisions of players on the ball all the time by telling them what to do, as something that you see come back in a coach-centered environment. And that's exactly right. A good coach takes a step back, observes. Every so often will provide some feedback, but it's not constantly trying to impact everything the players do, especially on the ball. As soon as I start telling players what to do on the ball, I'm taking away something really important. Their autonomy, their ability to make their own decisions. Big difference between one and the other. Again, something to look up, the Stroop effect. Interference impacts performance. I'll explain to you what this means. All right, this is done by a psychiatrist a couple decades ago already, but still used widely. And it's important to understand this. If I'm playing on the field and I have a ball at my feet, I already have a lot to deal with. Right? It's a fluid game. It's super dynamic. I have teammates to deal with. I have opponents who are putting pressure on me. There's a lot going on. Now, my coach suddenly gets up on his feet and is telling me what to do. All right. Now I have something else to process, as I'm already trying to process what happens around me. All right, which makes it more complicated. This will actually delay my ability to make a good decision. Now, what if I have multiple coaches, or add to that a parent side, only parents telling me what to do, right? Just to show you, the more people providing me with input, as much as it's well, everyone means well, I'm going to struggle to make a good decision. All right, the Stroop effect, again, something to look up if you're interested in it, but it impacts the performance of a player greatly. That's why I mentioned observe and analyze. All right, one thing that I've done more and more is not only take a step back, but make notes. All right, so I can, for example, when it comes to halftime, highlight one or two important things, maybe that have come back a couple of times, rather than trying to do it just by memory, because the science of learning shows that, after a little while, we've already forgotten quite a bit. One voice on the sideline. Key to remember, every team has a head coach, 1 to 2 assistant coaches, and or potentially a professional coach. Right, and I'll touch on that again in a little bit, but it is important also for what I discussed before, that only one person speaks up. All right, and everyone has a role to play, but we shouldn't have 2 to 3 adults on one sideline trying to control everything that happens on the field. All right, we want to make sure that players learn to play the game based on a position of learn to play the game based on the principles rather than just on a set position as well. I'll touch on that as we move on in a little while as well. Just remember, one of the things that makes this game so exciting is the fact that it's fluid, dynamic, and it's truly a player's game. Many professional coaches will say the same thing as well. You can try to influence what happens, but you can't control. However, because in so many American sports, coaches have such an impact, call the plays, they decide what happens on the field, so to speak. People think that carries over into soccer as well, but soccer is so different from many other sports also popular in this country in that sense. All right, and talk about child-centered versus coach-centered. What is process-based? What is outcome-based coaching? Right? Am I looking at providing children an opportunity to learn and develop, or do I care about the W to satisfy my own personal needs, aka my ego? All right. All right, so quickly, our system of play utilized. All right, one goalkeeper, or the goal player, I should say, 2 defenders, a right center defender, a left center defender. Please don't call them left and right back, all right, because that gives the impression that they're outside players, but they really got to first and foremost work together in the central channels. Then a number 6 who retreats a little bit more, also forming a nice little diamond with the 3 players underneath. All right, he or she is responsible for connecting the back 3, so the 2 defenders and the keeper, with the left winger, the right winger, and the center forward. All right, so deep breath on my end, because I'm gonna call in a friend using something from a famous game show. Mr. Pardo, can you help explain the build-out line and more importantly, what has changed going into this year? Because a lot of people are probably familiar with the build-out line, but New Jersey Youth Soccer has made some changes to make sure there's a unified approach across travel leagues in New Jersey this coming fall, and it is different from what it was last spring.
Okay, so I'll just explain just the whole build-out line as if no one knows what's going on. So to encourage play from the back, New Jersey Youth Soccer instituted a build-out line a few years ago. Whereas once the ball goes over the end line or the ball goes to the goalkeeper, the attacking team has to retreat behind the build-out line, which would be the line with the black line with the cones. So then on a goal kick or a free kick from inside the build-out line, the attacking team would be behind the build-out line. The team with the ball can then play the ball to one of their teammates inside the build-out line. Once their teammate touches the ball, then the attacking team can go after the ball. They can't go after it before then. If you're kicking the ball, you can also kick it past the build-out line. Once it goes past the build-out line, then the opposing team can go after the ball, whether their teammate receives it or not. Now, what they have the rules they've changed is what happens when the goalie gets the ball. So the goalie makes a save. It's still the same thing as it was last year, where the opposing team has to retreat to behind the build-out line. The goalie can then throw the ball, roll the ball to a teammate. The attacking team cannot come in, cannot cross the build-out line until the teammate touches the ball or the ball stops. So same thing on a kick. If the ball is kicked and the ball just stops and hasn't crossed the build-out line, once the ball stops, then the attacking team can come in. Same thing if the goalie throws it or rolls it. Now, the one change that they did make was when the goalie makes a save and has the ball, once there's a change of possession from his hand, what the goalie can do, the goalie can drop the ball. Once a change of possession from the hand to the foot, which they're not exactly clear that it has to touch the foot. So I think the referees may see it differently, but I'm going to be telling teams when I referee that as soon as the goalie drops the ball, that means the ball is live. The opposing team can come in and attack the ball. Because the alternative would be the goalie can drop the ball and it could bounce, it could roll a little bit, you can't come in, but then once it stops, you can come in, it's a live ball, because that's the rule. So again, on free kicks, whether it's a goal kick or a free kick inside the build-out line, it's second touch by the teammate inside the build-out line before the attacking team can go in. When the goalie has the ball and he rolls or throws, you have to wait for the second touch. So that's the teammate touching the ball. If the goalie drops the ball, it becomes live right away. And if the ball just rolls to a stop, it also becomes live. And then obviously when the ball crosses the build-out line, the ball is live no matter who touches it. Any questions? I don't see any questions. So that should be good. If anyone has any questions, they can send me an email. But I also recommend before the game, most referees at a course, since there was a change in the rule, they should go over the build-out line, and they'll go over it anyway in the fall since teams haven't played since the spring. But always ask the referee to just clarification on all that, and then make sure that both teams are on the same page with everything. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Pardo, for that. So quick reminder on all this. So there's no heading, U9, U10, no punting or drop kicking for that matter. Rich just explained, what happens on a goal kick as well as when the ball is in the goalkeeper's hands. And don't forget that offside is only called in the offensive third of the field. All right. So that's from the build-out line. upwards, so to speak. All right. So 2/3 of the field you find, you can only be called offside in attacking third of the field. All right. So before I go to the last little bit, I mean, as I said, we're of course, to do well. I would love you all to use the chat, and in the chat, give me, each individual give me 3 qualities you think a good youth coach should possess. All right. What makes someone a good youth coach? I'll monitor the chat as we go, trying to, make sure you stay on top of things. Use the chat, 3 qualities that you think a good youth coach should possess. All right, there we go. Slowly but surely, the answers are trickling. Again, use the chat, 3 qualities you think a good youth coach should possess. All right. So I like the comments coming in a lot about being positive, being patient, enthusiasm, being able to encourage players. So a lot of it is about, how to manage the group, how to get through the children, right? Knowledge of the X's and O's is important. But there's a lot of other skills, that a good youth coach should possess. So again, it's good to think through these things, because again, knowledge of the game in itself is helpful, and some base knowledge of the X's and O's is absolutely helpful and needed. However, I know of people that have played at a very high level that I wouldn't want anywhere near any kids in our program, because they're not patient, they're unable to communicate effectively with children, and most likely care more about winning than about developing players. So couple of things that we're going to highlight, and if there's any questions about this at the end, let me know. So first and foremost, when it comes to the role of the coach, right, each team has a head coach, 1 to 2 assistant coaches, and a professional coach. Although for some teams, the head coach is also the professional coach. As stated before, we asked to make sure there's one voice on the sideline that, that is preferably, or that should be, the head coach. With that, when the professional coach is in attendance, assuming he or she is not the head coach, utilize them and give them the opportunity to take charge, right? There's a reason why we have these knowledgeable professionals helping us out. Any volunteer coach can learn from the professional coach that we have on board. Everyone has a role to play, though. Just, keep in mind that it's to have one voice on the sideline. It's helpful to divide duties where, again, the head coach maybe focus on the bigger picture. He or she is the voice, the players here. Well, one assistant maybe make sure players are rotated on and off. Another may talk to the players when they go on the field or come off the field. Everyone is important, and we need, especially the younger age, it's helpful to have multiple coaches on the sideline, because trying to manage a group of 8, 9-year-olds sometimes feels like you're hurting cats. So having multiple people there is important. But again, we also just want to make sure it doesn't turn into chaos. Want to highlight this, and this is a rule set forward by New Jersey Youth Soccer. You're only allowed to have 3 coaches on the sideline max. So if your team has 1 head coach, 2 assistant coaches assigned, and for 5 out of the 10 games a professional coach shows up, someone needs to move to the other side of the field so the professional coach is allowed on the sideline as well. Just make sure you're prepared for that. I don't want any surprises there, but these are key. One voice. Let the professional coach do his or her job. Make sure everyone is important. Everyone has a role to play. And again, maximum of 3 coaches on the sideline. Now, a lot of the help from the coaches will be needed on Saturday. We have the Saturday training schedule worked out. The parent coach especially play a big role there in implementing our lesson plans. So every parent coach is supported by a professional coach. We have made sure that for each group on the 10 boys and the 10 girls, there's additional coaches around to support the parent coaches. Lesson plans will be provided. That's one. Coaches will be there to provide you with support and guide you through it as well. We provide you with the lesson plans as well as the support of that professional coach to make sure that there's continuity between what's done during the week to what we do in the weekends. Make sure it's age appropriate, focused on the needs of the individuals that you work with. All right, so that's the Saturday training. Deep breath of mine. Sunday games, again, one voice, divide duties. So, as I stated before, in our environment at under 9 and under 10, we choose to make sure that players learn to play the game based on the principles of the game, not just on a position. I would be able, and I'll give you the example of the goalkeeper. If someone is stuck in the goal from, say, 8 years of age and onwards, they may become a reasonably good shot blocker, but I am able to pick those goalkeepers out of quickly because they lack in many other areas in which they should have developed. Or I've been in scenarios in which I was assigned an under 13 or under 14 team in which, we try to play a certain way, but we can't play that way because I have players that have always played defense in what I would call an adult-centered, coach-centered environment, and they have not developed their ability based on the overall principles of the game, but based on the position. So we want to make sure that players are rotated overall positions. But with that, it's important to know that we don't want/need all players to play all positions in one game. We do want to make sure that there's a little bit of structure in this chaos. So what we recommend is that, for example, little Ruben, using myself as an example, in the first 2 or 3 weeks plays a little bit of defense. You get a little bit of time to get used to the position. And then the next couple of games you play in midfield. And the next couple of games following you play, in offense/rotate through in the goal, for example. That way there's a little bit of consistency. You see all positions, all right? But you're not rotated over 7 positions in one game. A player should be maybe playing 2 positions at best, right, every game. All right, maybe 3. Sometimes things happen and you have to move some things around. All right, you could that is just the nature of our environment. But try to create a little bit of consistency while following this plan still. All right. Now, we also want to make sure that players are given equal playing time. Now, as a club, we have a rule that every child should be getting 50% of the time. There's no reason for kids to get close to equal playing time, but balance it out across the season. Don't worry about making it an exact science, because in some games, a child may see a little less time on the field than someone else, but you can balance it across the season, right? It's not like down to the minutes specifically for each and every game, right? And sometimes, based on need, you may have to make some changes, but across the season, try to balance out the playing time. All right. Any questions about any of this before I move on? All right. So we're making good time. We're almost done. So important as we finish up, communication is key. We do our best to provide you with as much information as you can. So make sure parent and pro coach are aligned. Hopefully everyone has collaborated with the professional coach. If you have yet to speak to your professional coach, please do so. If there's any issues there, let me know. That really falls within my jurisdiction. All right. Make sure the expectations for parents and players alike are set. Right, ahead of the season, going into the season, provide clarity. Like, what time is training? What time do we want them at training? What are they supposed to be wearing at practice? What do the parents need to do to make sure, it's a successful experience for everyone? So, for example, I'm coaching from the parents' sideline to make sure team snap is up to date. Whatever, set the expectations, and having a preseason meeting is also really important. That way, they get to know you, the coach, as well as get a better understanding of what's expected. One thing I want to highlight, there will be occasions that parents ask questions about playing time or positions potentially. Please make sure that you never have a conversation with the parent straight after a game, because that can turn into a heated debate, which is because it's challenging at that point in time, straight after a game, to be completely composed. Unfortunately, that is the worst time to have that conversation. Just let parents know that you're willing to speak to them, but just tell them, hey, you know what, let's have a chat 24 hours or 48 hours from now, and we'll address whatever questions you have / concerns you have. I want to make sure that everyone knows that they're not alone. All right, so I am in charge as the director of coaching on all that involves coaching. All right, whether it's implementing a development philosophy to make sure that players are are developed in a certain way based on our training sessions as well as when they play on the field. Our VPs of travel, Eric introduced himself earlier. Ellen is not around, but he's very helpful as well. They can help with a lot of administrative stuff. And then Rich is not only referee, but also administrator. He deals with all the scheduling, both for training as well as games. Reach out to him. We're here to help. All right. No question is crazy enough for us. We want to make sure you succeed. And if you do well, we as a club do well. All right. The last bit. All right. Famous quote from Johan Cruyff, one of the game's greatest. All right. I'm happy to say that that's all, folks. So if anyone